Okay, hi everyone. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for joining me again. Lately, the last few videos have been, on the Go Show anyway, have been on letters that Nichiren wrote to senior students. In this case, Gijo-Bo was Nichiren's senior when Nichiren was studying and practicing at, I think, Shechoji Temple. At any rate, it's funny how roles become reversed over time. But my point is that you will hear, or as I read, you'll hear Nichiren's words to keep certain things to themselves. Keep this secret. Don't share this with others. He's not trying to create a cult, as it were, of Illuminati within the Buddhist order. Rather, what he's sensitive to is understanding the limitations of a lot of the people of his time, the lay believers, those just starting out, students, early students and monks, who just haven't studied enough to really understand the full implication of something. And rather than put it out there and create doubt with it, because he was dealing with that all the time. You heard it in his Go shows. These question and answers he would set up would be largely to address doubt. And he has tremendous scholarship, so he can put doubt away pretty easily for himself, but not the case for people who are less studied. So I'm saying this as a preface because you're going to hear it again. But more than that, what I want is for you to have the confidence that as you study, as you practice more and more, many of these things will become obvious to you as well. It doesn't take that long. It just takes the effort. For instance, as I read, this is a very brief Go show. So there'll be things that he cites, writings and ideas that he cites. And I encourage you to take those as topics of research for yourself. That doesn't mean you have to go off and sojourn to every book and every word ever written about a certain subject and compare it to blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying that for your own edification, for your own solidity, for your own confidence. And after all, this is what the practice of Buddhism is, right? We want to increase our resolve. And to have a resolute mind means to create a mind free from doubt. Whatever that takes for me isn't necessarily the same as what it takes for you. On certain topics, it may be far easier for you to go, aha, I get that, because your insight will be specific to your life experience, right? This is the whole of Buddhism, is built around this idea that each of us not only has this innate Buddha nature and that we're constructed of it and in it, but that all of us, because we're individuated in samsara, come to that information through our own perceptive path. This is the path of Buddhism. It's not the same for everyone. It may be very similar, but never is it exactly the same. Okay, so especially in a brief Go show like this, a brief letter, it's easy to hear a concept that maybe you've heard several times, but hear it resonate completely differently for whatever reason. So that may just mean that you need to go back and reassess your thoughts or your opinions or your predilections or your insights on that particular idea, and maybe revise it a little bit, or maybe see it altogether differently. Anyway, this is the nature of study. So I don't want you to hear any of these advanced, I guess I'll say, Go shows. Advanced because they're for people who are already quite familiar with the concepts in Buddhism, so that when he just flutters through them, you don't just get lost. And if you do, don't feel bad. It just means that you have to do a little bit more research so that you can solidify your specific understanding of this path. And if your specific understanding, because this has happened to me, so I'll share it with you, if your specific understanding after 5 years of practice, 10 years of practice, and you read something or you hear me read something and offer my insight and you go, what? That's a good thing, because that means you now need to reevaluate where you thought you stood. It may be that you've had an assumption for a very long time that has colored your interpretation. I won't say wrongly, but in a limited way. Because you may have a good understanding of a concept that works for your current development, but after a while of chanting, you're going to develop beyond what you're conscious of developing. And you may have experienced this karmically. A lot of times when we change something fundamental in our thinking, we're not so much as aware of it, like, oh, I always thought that was red. Now I know it's da-da-da. Or now I know it's, I don't know, crimson. It's different than just red or whatever. It may be a very big difference, whatever. So you'll get your own aha moment, right? You'll get an insight. And it works for you because it's a new way of thinking, until you reach another point where you go, something else confronts your way of thinking, and you're thinking, well, I already resolved this for myself. But with a little more information and a new, I don't want to use the word path here, but a new vantage point, if you will, on something that you thought you understood well, may actually not necessarily controvert what you think you know, but add a whole new dimension to it. And by that nature, give you a much more profound insight. Well, that's okay. That's part of breaking through karma. And we're always doing that in big ways and in little ways. Many times in my practice, I've felt better and thought, wow, I get this concept so much better now. And then a month later, I start to realize my relationships have changed with people, or my in certain situations just don't seem to affect me the way they used to. And that's when I remind myself, think mindfulness, if you will, that, oh, my karma has changed. Let me acknowledge that I've changed karma. I may not really understand how that karma has changed or what exactly karmically in my life has changed, but I recognize a change. My life condition has been affected because there are aspects in my life which have now gone by the wayside, and others which have popped up that I'm very grateful for, and they are the result of my practice. So always take time to acknowledge that your life has moved and changed, because that's not idle boasting, and it's not glorifying changes. It's not giving yourself too many attaboys. It's simply recognizing that the practice actually works. It's actual proof in your own life experience that your life experience is changing, morphing, expanding, bettering. This is what the practice is for. So please take time to acknowledge that. Don't just discount it as, well, my life's better now. Let me continue doing this silly thing and see, if it ever works. Well, it is working. So that's why I want you to acknowledge those changes. And by the same token, when you're struggling, realize that what you're struggling with is a new insight into your obstacles. This is why Nichiren always says, take that to Gohanzan. Why? Not because it's a magic wishing jewel, but because at this time, when you're facing an obstacle, is when you need to be most concerned about communicating with that Buddha nature so that you can sift this out, change it, modify it, affect it instead of it affecting you. It's an opportunity. Cliche, right? Certainly true in Buddhist practice, though. It's a cliche because it's full of truth and fact. Sometimes hard to remember, though, when we're struggling with stuff, right? We tend to get swamped by it. Our samsaric tendency is to just overload ourselves with this difficulty instead of realizing that the difficulty is an opportunity to peer through the branches of it instead of being swallowed by it like seaweed. Okay, so here we go. This next one is a letter. Maybe it doesn't even bother to give it any other title, but letter to Gijo-Bo. Oh, and for those of you who are still struggling with what does Namu Myoho Renge Kyo mean, this is a beginner question, an intermediate question, and a senior question. It constantly pops up in our mind. What are we actually babbling? So Nichiren is just going to kindly like whip through that right now. And I say whip through it because he's talking to someone who used to be a senior to him. So again, he's talking to an educated head monk who's responsible for teaching others. And so we're reading lately. We're reading some high level letters, right? The stuff of the elite, if you will. So consider yourself amongst us. Yes, I know I said us. Okay, here we go. I have carefully reviewed your question about the Buddhist teachings. The blessings of the Lotus Sutra, or the benefits of the Lotus Sutra, or the opportunities, or the clear-headed teaching, or the ultimate teachings of the Lotus Sutra, all better ways of saying blessing. I swear I'm going to rewrite that out. Because it's so charged for Westerners to hear blessing, that it sounds like it's something that's given to you. And you have to, once again, I'll say this again, every teaching in Buddhism is about something you already know. It's something within us. It's not bestowed upon us. If it's bestowed, if you need to use that word, you're bestowing it to yourself. A realization, see, the word realization actually means to finally discover something which already exists, right? So that's what's happening here. Of the Lotus Sutra is a state of life that can only be understood between Buddhas. So to be enlightened, to be awakened, is something that only is fully understood or even partially understood by somebody who's achieved it to some level, to some degree, right? You can't teach somebody else how to drive if you haven't ever driven. You don't fully understand the kinds of conditions and tendencies and the entire experience of driving until you've been behind the wheel and you've figured out that you need to stop the car. You know, as a passenger, you can tell you don't want to run into that wall, stop the car, but you still don't understand what it is to do that, right? Same thing. It is an inner enlightenment that even the wisdom of Shakyamuni's emanations throughout the 10 directions may be no match for. Now see, if you've never studied Buddhism or you don't or haven't studied much, you may still not understand that Shakyamuni's emanations are expedient devices. When Shakyamuni talks about other Buddhas and bodhisattvas from all over the 10 directions and so on and so forth, he's talking about the big bad wolf and Little Red Riding Hood, and okay, to put it in Western terms, it's not that any of us are Little Red Riding Hood or are the big bad wolf. These are personages created to understand situations of the mind, the way we think, the way things take us over, the way we influence and the way we are influenced. Right? All of Buddhism is about our mental functioning and how to get around it or through it. But sometimes to know something is simply to understand it, right? So even the emanations throughout the 10 directions may be no match for it. In other words, all of Shakyamuni's own stories, his fables, his constructs to make exemplars of what it is to attain enlightenment are no match for the information contained in the Lotus Sutra, that takes us directly to it. Ah, saying it that way, it makes more sense, right? But that's what he's saying. That is why, as you well know, Gijo-Bo, even the great teacher Tendai commented on the character Myo, saying that it is defined as a beyond ordinary comprehension. So there it is again. If you want to understand Myoho Renge Kyo, you can't just simply chant or repeat it. It is powerful enough to open, to invoke that door to your own Buddhahood, but only through study and constant practice will you come to know, realize the actual value of that character, of what it stands for, right? It's one thing to know the value of a mother among species. You watch enough National Geographic shows and so forth, and you understand the mother has a very critical role in the birth and the breeding and the survival of species. Great. You can read tons and tons of medical journals on the value of the mother. But until you've had a mother and lived with a mother for your life, you don't truly understand the value of mother, because at some point the value of, quote, mother extends far beyond the actual individual you might be pointing out and labeling mother. And this is what it is to invoke something. I mean, it's a joke in a lot of movies, and it's a serious thing in a lot of movies and storytelling. When somebody shouts mother or says the word mother, they're looking for more than just an individual, aren't they? They're invoking motherness. So it's a shallow example, although I'm not discounting the importance of mothers in comparison to Buddhahood, but the same kind of thing, in that when we invoke Myoho Renge Kyo, we are invoking a process of formation of life itself. And of course, we are part of that life, and that formation is happening constantly within our lives, within the 3,000 realms in each thought moment. So all of that within this one sentence. This is why, he's breezing through this, but there's a tremendous amount backing up these concepts that he's throwing at Gijo-Bo, who should be as educated as Nichiren is, and therefore these concepts should be quite familiar to him, right? So, moving on. Tendai commented on the character Myo, saying it is defined as beyond ordinary comprehension, ordinary being uninitiated, unstudied. As for this sutra, however, it is divided into various practices. These are the teachings that were known only by men, such as Tendai, Miao-Lo, and Dengyo. The great teacher Dengyo, former to him in Japan, in particular, even though he was the reincarnation of Tendai, which is not a literal, because there is no reincarnation in Buddhism, but as far as capacity to understand and to teach, Dengyo was an equal teacher and student of Buddhism to Tendai. So that's what he's saying. Sent envoys to Tang, China on many occasions in an effort to resolve the doubts of others. So what is really important is that the teachings of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, of the 100 worlds, and 1,000 factors, and of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life are the essence of this sutra, the Lotus Sutra. These teachings are described in the work entitled Great Concentration and Insight. Great Concentration and Insight was a work by Tendai resolving teachings within the Lotus Sutra. This is all Lotus Sutra school teaching. Next, so now he's described to Gijo-Bo does he use the word I'm looking? I was going to say it's not provisional. It's the what's the other word? Anyway, the pre-essential teachings within the Lotus Sutra. Next, the teaching of the lifespan chapter is what I, Nichiren, personally depend on. So as we've already heard in the previous sutras, the revelation in the lifespan chapter, when Shakyamuni, we've been saying it a lot, I've been saying it a lot lately, but this is the Shakyamuni dropping the mic moment, right? So in the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the lifespan of the Tathagata chapter in the Lotus Sutra is when there's a decided shift in the teachings of the Lotus, where Shakyamuni goes, okay, you guys are all deifying me and looking to me to be the example of how to attain what I alone attained in this lifetime as a human being. What I want you guys to understand is that you're all the same as me. You're no different. You all have the same opportunity and the same avenue to attain your own Buddha-ness. You can all attain what I have attained in this life. Now, even though it may sound like he said that all along, because you're reading with modern eyes and listening with modern ears, and you can go through and read earlier sutras and go, gosh, there he's saying it right there. But that's your insight. That's your modern capacity to understand. When he was teaching this, people were still deifying him. They were making statues that looked like him. They were doing everything they could to worship him. That's why I tell you, we don't worship in Buddhism. Unless you can truly turn that word, that rhetoric, unto yourself. And in the West, that's almost impossible, because we're inculcated in our cultures to think of worship as something we gain from outside ourselves. And if anything, the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra is adamant about, no, this is something that's always been. I'm not the only one to get it. I'm not the only one I didn't invent it. It's been there all along. It is there here and now. And you will gain the wisdom to your Buddha, to the Buddha-ness yourself. It's already there. The only thing in the way is your you-ness, your ego, your attachments, your delusions about what's happening around you and inside of you, and why your environment doesn't seem to reflect who you are, when in fact it is an exact reflection of who you are. But only through study and retraining your mind, pushing away, getting rid of, dissolving these delusions, many of which you don't even know you have because they're buried so deeply, that only through Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, practicing, chanting, will you invoke your true nature, the nature of all things, so clearly that those other things will no longer affect you. They won't influence you, or you'll minimize them at very least, right? So that's the core of what the Lotus Sutra is about. And this is why he's saying, the lifespan chapter is what I, Nichiren, personally depend on. And why does he depend on it? Although Tendai and Dengyo also understood it in a general way, they never put it into words or proclaimed it, invoked it. They knew they had to get there. The same is true of Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu. The verse section of the chapter states, ... single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha, not hesitating even if it cost them their lives. So does that mean that costing their lives would be to die right there on the spot? To literally die? No. What it means is, single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha is that the Buddha is not other. It is, boy, language can be tricky here. We have an idea of what we are, ourselves. We've distinguished ourselves from everything else. We've discriminated a self, an image of self. But it's a false image. The true image of self is our Buddha, is that which creates us. That which creates us, the formation of us, is our true self. All of the other inclinations and attachments that we glom onto it, that's not our true self. That's an invented self. So when we single-mindedly desire to see the Buddha, what we're trying to see is our true selves, not something other. And we don't hesitate, even if it costs us our lives, means that the cost is something we invent. That is the attachments that we call the invention of ourself. Our ego is an invented thing, and letting that ego go feels like it's a cost. But even that, if you can just let go of those impressions of what your self is, not to die, not to extinguish, but to let go of the patterns and the accoutrement, the attachments that we build our image of self with, we'll finally see clearly our true image, our true self, our Buddha, the Buddha, because it's the formations of everything that we experience and more. So it's universal, right? As a result of this passage, I have revealed the Buddhahood in my own life. He probably said it clearer there than I did in the last 6 sentences. He revealed the Buddhahood in his own life. Nichiren did. The reason is that it is this sutra passage that has enabled me to embody the 3 great secret laws, or the reality of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, that is found in the lifespan chapter. But keep this secret. And he says again, keep it secret. Because if you tell people this, they're going to look at you like you're a lunatic. They're going to have so much doubt that they'll just outright look at you like you don't know what you're talking about. Buddha is a separate thing, and I'm chasing after it, and one day I'll get there. Like the fish analogy. You're already in it. But it's hard. It's hard to get that. It's if you got that right away when you started practicing Buddhism, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, you are a better man than I, or a better woman than I. Ultimately, we're all Buddha. So the betterness that I just quoted is a samsaric betterness. The great teacher of Mount Hiei, Dengyo, journeyed to China and received instruction on the point of this passage. Single, of single-mindedly, means the one pure way, and the mind means all phenomena. Do you see how this is? He's taking this apart even now, because even as he's talking to an educated Buddhist, he knows that the language is tricky here, right? So single-mindedly means the one pure way, and the mind means all phenomena. Because a phenomena is itself a removal, once removed from, through the nidana, right, from Buddha-ness. That is why the great teacher Tendai, explaining the Chinese character of mind, said that it is 4 brushstrokes representing the moon and the 3 stars, and that this implies that the mind of the effect of Buddhahood is pure and clean. I, Nichiren, say that single stands for myo, or wonderful and difficult to understand. Mind for ho, or law. Desiring for ren, or lotus. See, with your eyes, for gi, or ge, or flower, and Buddha for kyo, or sutra. Myoho Renge Kyo. Wonderful mind, desiring to see the Buddha. Myoho Renge Kyo. You can construct it right there. In propagating these 5 characters, practitioners should, quote, not hesitate even if it costs them their lives, end quote. Single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha may be read as follows. Single-mindedly observing the Buddha, concentrating one's mind on seeing the Buddha, and when looking at one's own mind, perceiving that it is the Buddha. I'm going to read that again. He's restating this. Myoho Renge Kyo. Single-mindedly observing the Buddha within oneself. What else could you do? Can you observe through somebody else? You might understand the mind of somebody else, or the wish of somebody else, or the will of somebody else in your own way, but you don't know their actual motivations or what they're thinking. So when you observe the Buddha, what are you doing? What can you observe? In samsara, you can only observe what's going on in your own mind. So single-mindedly observing the Buddha, bingo. Concentrating one's mind on seeing the Buddha, so within your mind, manifest Buddha. And by counteraction, or action begets reaction, right? So by action of seeing Buddha in your own mind, you are repelling what isn't Buddha. All of those attachments, that other stuff. But without even thinking about it, because you're focusing on Buddha. This is how practice and chanting works. You push the other stuff out of the way, not by thinking about it, not by trying to end it. Focus instead on Buddha. Even if you don't know what that is, the invocation will bring it. When you're in tremendous pain or fear and you invoke Mother or whatever it is, Mother doesn't come. She may not even be around anymore. But there's a sensation of comfort that you're looking for that does manifest. This is using the samsaric mind to work to bring you to your Buddha nature. And when looking at one's own mind, as long as you're in there, perceiving that it is the Buddha. Because when you look at your own mind, as you focus on the Buddha and force it to be single-mindedly become aware of it, you are manifesting the very energy of formation. And guess what that is? Buddha. It's amazing. Having attained the fruit of Buddhahood, the eternally inherent 3 bodies, I may surpass even Tendai and Dengyo and excel even Nagarjuna and Mahakashyapa. The Buddha wrote that one should become the master of one's mind rather than let one's mind master one's self. This is in reference to the teachings of the monkey mind, the mind of samsaric delusions and cravings, in contrast to an awakened or enlightened mind of no distinctions or attachments. This is what I mean when I emphatically urge you to give up even your body in consideration, in your mind's thoughts, and never begrudge even your life for the sake of the Lotus Sutra. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Nichiren. I don't know. The next Gosho is on practicing the Buddhist teachings. Can't wait. So, perhaps after digesting this Gosho, it will become more apparent why what we read in the previous Gosho, that we are ourselves Myoho Renge Kyo, that we are ourselves manifestations of the 3 bodies. When we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. With our mirror, perfect mirror of that enlightenment, that all of it is about invoking and realizing that formation energy that we all are of and are. Oh, language, so frustrating. How do we manifest this truth? Because it is free from distinctions. Why is it free from distinctions? Because it is the energy of formations themselves. That which makes the things that we are attached to, that we desire, that we are distracted from, that distract us, that we invent to distract ourselves and distract others. All of those things are products of formation. What is the formation? It is the nidana. What is the fundament of nidana? Where does the nidana even begin? Buddha. The energy of formations is given a desire, a will to perceive itself. All of that is nidana. And in the process of that nidana, obstacles are created because there need to be stepping stones to cross that river instead of simply being on both sides of the river. The river doesn't even, it's just there. It's not an obstacle. It's not a thing, because formations made the river, made the shores. That is also an invention. These are the delusions of samsara. And these are the things we construct this mundane idea of self. And all of that, and I do mean all of it, is the foundation for our epistemological reality, our belief systems about what we are, who we are, where we are, what people mean to us, what we mean to others, and on and on and on and on. The monkey mind. So to be clear of all of that, that's Buddha. And all of us can realize it within our own earthly mundane form without getting rid of it. It's our vehicle to see it. Without it, we would, ironically, we wouldn't have the motivation, the desire to experience it. But to experience it, to truly awaken to it, all of that other falls away. It doesn't die. It doesn't go extinct. It just stops. It ceases. Surangama Sutra. Cease the formations of ... He's been saying it since day one. But in the Lotus, he gives us a method that anyone, no matter how studied or not, can invoke that very nature without even fully understanding or comprehending all the concepts. Anyone who will, with the desire, and that's the key, if you truly have the resolve in your mind to experience this enlightenment, this awakening, then Namo Myoho Renge Kyo is the sound, the vibration, the tonality, the conceptual reality, the invocation in your formations to experience your core energies of formations, pre-nidana. All right. I think I've said it enough ways. If not, comment, let me know. But yeah, I did these last few Go shows, and the next few, this collection really knocked it out of the park for me. I still remember those days. I don't remember how old I was when it happened, but it was well into my scholarship study of Buddhism. And it seemed like everything I read at that point from Nagarjuna on just started just bouncing around, glowing in my head with realizations. And I still get them when I read those things. They're such powerful words conceptually to me. But I also realized that a lot of that insight and power comes from all the previous practice and study I've done. Without it, I'm not sure how I would read it today. So thus all my caveats as I talk about this to you, because I don't know where you are in your practice. But hopefully my sharing it in these videos this way will help, I don't know, spark some insights somewhere. And this is why I appreciate you guys so much. And I'm right back to that. Thank you so much. Support if you can. Have several opportunities to do that. If you don't have time always to watch these videos, as you should probably know, I've got a podcast out there. You can get it through all sorts of places, from iHeart, Podbean, Google, iTunes. I don't think it's iTunes anymore. I think it's Apple Podcasts, Pandora. I don't know. I as many as I can find. I'm subscribed to them. Podbean is a service that pushes through all of these others. So if you can think of one that would be important for me to add it in the comments, and I'll research it. Okay. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you all. And I can't wait to do the next one. See you then.